And I've been at schools where the fights are so regular that the kids are immune to it and they get juiced and pumped and want to see, ooh. They want to see the fight because I was at a K-8 school also. So the middle schoolers would be fighting all the time. Well, the whole school. But when it was recess, after lunch is when we would hear them walking up the stairs. And my kids were so juiced about that. And I was like, this is the wrong thing to get excited about. Like, there would be fights and I couldn't break them up. And you'd have adults that would just walk by.
Welcome to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. This podcast is more than storytelling, it's archival justice. For too long, the voices of Black educators who have left traditional spaces in education have been silenced, dismissed, or left out of the record. Here, we reclaim that narrative. Every interview is a living archive capturing the wisdom, resilience, and truth of Black educators who have shaped classrooms, communities, and generations. Together, we name the challenges: racial battle fatigue, systemic inequities, the weight of caring too much, but we also honor the brilliance and joy that Black educators bring, the creativity, the innovation, the care, and the deep legacy of resilience. Each episode is both a testimony and an offering, an act of preservation for those who came before, and a guide for those still walking this path today. By listening, you are helping to ensure that these stories are not lost, but held, celebrated, and passed forward. So take a breath, settle in, and join us as we honor the past, uplift the present, and reimagine the future of education together. All right, folks, welcome back to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators with me, your host, Dr. Asia. So glad that you all listened to me again. We're almost at 100 episodes, folks, and I'm just so honored to be able to share stories with you all that come from Black educators all over the country. And of course, I have another fire episode for you. We have a filmmaker in our presence today, folks, and I'm excited to learn more about that. But I'm jumping ahead as usual. Welcome to our show, Stacie McClam. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I can't complain. It's beautiful here. I'm well rested. I'm well moisturized. I was putting on lotion, of course, before we got on this camera, but I'm doing really well. And I'm excited to have you here. I've been following you on LinkedIn and your journey. And I'm so glad. I think I reached out to you or you reached out to me. Either way, I'm glad to have you on the show. And you're doing well. And where are you coming from?
I am in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah. Beautiful California. So, and we'll talk about that too, because lots of things are going to be on this show. But let's go ahead and get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So I am from the Los Angeles area, a small city called Carson in Los Angeles County. And I am a former teacher. Of course, I taught across the United States and abroad. So mostly taught first grade. The highest grade I taught was fourth. And yeah, I've had a journey from teaching to law school and now a filmmaker. Not planned.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a whole thing, right? I think you might be one of the first folks who've gone to law school who've come on the show. So, well, let's just go ahead and jump in. So tell us about your journey into education. How did you know that education was for you?
Yes. Well, I was bused to schools outside of my neighborhood from first grade through high school. So very early on, I knew that schools were different. As a little girl, my parents didn't have to tell me why I was being bused. I figured it out because all the kids in the neighborhood, were less than 5 minutes away. And I'm like, how come it's dark outside? I'm up getting dressed and everybody else is asleep in the neighborhood. That's weird. How come they're not taking the bus with me? Why am I not going down the street? So my neighborhood was an all Black neighborhood. And the schools that I were bused to were white and Asian mostly. I was in the magnet program, the gifted program. And so, yeah, I was just like, oh, okay. So the gifted program, that's where the white and Asian students are. Interesting. I was years old. I'm figuring this out. And then I had negative experiences growing up in the school system from tracking in middle school and high school counselor who wouldn't let me take AP classes. My grandmother was a teacher in segregated Virginia. I was very close to her. And my mom used to tell me when I was little that her family was respected for the simple fact that her mother was a teacher, my grandmother. So I always respected teachers, put them on a pedestal. The pictures that I saw of my grandmother, it looked like they were going to church, but they came to school with the kitten heels, the long matching skirts, the matching suits, hats, gloves, and they taught elementary. I was like, they're going to school like that? But like in my little girl brain, and maybe it wasn't really like that, but because I wasn't there, I'm just going off of what my mom told me, how these teachers presented themselves. I just thought teachers were everything. And so, based on hearing that from my grandmother and my mom, and then seeing the realities, I'm being bused, I'm seeing these tracking issues in schools. I'm like, that doesn't add up to what my grandmother was talking about. Teaching was such a wonderful profession. She's building the community and all this. It didn't make sense. So I wanted to become a teacher to try to bridge the gap, I guess.
Thank you. And I think that it's a couple folks who've come on who've had a similar experience where they've noticed inequities really young, either because they were buzzed or somebody said something to them or their sibling experienced some type of tracking. And they're like, well, I have to support like solving this problem. So you went to school right away and got your bachelor's in education, or how did that go?
My major was social welfare because my university didn't have an education major. They only had a minor, which I did minor in. So I figured the closest would be social welfare or sociology. So I just chose social welfare, but never went into social work. But actually, teaching
I was
does
going
involve.
to say that is 100% social work. That's all it is some days. Yeah. So tell us about your time coming out. What grades did you teach? What was that experience like? Where were you living at that time?
Yes. So started, I went to Howard for graduate school to get my teaching credential. So that was in DC and started teaching there. During my student teaching, we were at schools that were where the diplomats send their kids. So these are really good public schools. And then when I graduated, I was placed in a school in the middle of the school year in March because a teacher left. So 3 out of the 4 experiences that I've had teaching have been in the middle of the school year for different personal and professional reasons. That's how it worked out. So I got good at being a fix-up lady, quickly being able to reestablish a classroom culture that had been damaged. At one school, I was teacher number 20, literally, is what a parent told me. And so, but that took a toll on me. And I don't know if as a Black educator, I just naturally did what needed to be done. And I wasn't realizing the toll it was taking on me over the years, but it did. And yeah, it's just a high teacher turnover at the type of schools that I taught at.
Yeah. I mean, I just heard you say the 20th teacher in a year. And I just think about how that the students were feeling, how the kids were feeling, how the community itself, the school, like what the environment was like. But telling us about you started in March at a particular school. Tell us about that journey. Were you able to get support from folks there? How long were you there for? What did you teach?
That was first grade, and I taught. Did I get support? Yes, I did. I did. They had a really good veteran teacher who was assigned to me, but it was still hard. The principal was supportive. It was just a tough school. At this elementary school, there was a security guard. So this was DC Northeast pre-gentrification near Gallaudet University. So it was a lot going on in an active neighborhood. And it wasn't, I don't even know. It's not even the kids, it's the system, but just things shouldn't have happened that happened at the school. And we broke the kids' trust. We made the culture not productive for them and healthy and happy, even with Black administration.
Yeah. Tell us more about that.
I don't know how it happens specifically. That's why I said it's just systemic because I've had some good principals. They do the best that they can, but they're still in a system. So there's still certain things they just can't do. And that bothered me. I think I felt like I was fighting myself because I knew people would say, "Oh, you're a great teacher. You're so good." but I knew I could do more and the students deserve more, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do more because of systems outside of my control, no matter how hard I worked. No, it couldn't. You get what I'm saying? Because of I know you know what I'm talking about, but the systems were in place where you can't. It's designed to keep students, these schools mostly that I taught were predominantly Black students, to not be successful. So
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah. And like you just said, that there's way more that you can do. You know that there's way more you can expose your students to. There's more resources. There's more everything. And families are probably, like you said, super appreciative that you were able to do what you did. And in their eyes, it's like, oh my, maybe I'm filling in some blanks here. Like, oh my gosh, turn the school around, you turn the classroom around, you're creating miracles. The kids, the culture is great. Everything feels good. But you had yourself experienced what it looks like, and like you said, these schools that had more resources in your own childhood. And then they say like, this is bare minimum as to what kids deserve and what's out there for kids to have. Yeah. That's got to be really tough.
it was. And it was so, I won't say bad, but just maybe I didn't feel fulfilled that I left and went to teach in Japan. So I finished out that year, taught another year. Then I was like, I can't, in my mind, I was like, I can't do the US. Like, even though that was just one school, one location, I was just like, I know this is nationwide. So I went to Japan and taught. When I was in Japan, I was like, I don't want to go back to the US and teach. What else can I do? I was like, maybe I can use the law to impact education. Went to law school in Denver, graduated, and then while I was waiting for my bar results, I said, let me, go back to teaching, got my Colorado certification. And I was placed in the middle of the school year about Halloween because a teacher had left. That was the opening. And I remember when I submitted the application, it was red. It was a high needs. I forgot the exact term they used. But again, that's, like, why do we say that? Why? Why? Why are you telling me? And I think we got a certain percent more because the concerns, but in Denver, that environment, it doesn't even look like it would be conducive to the kind of mental health issues and just trauma that was there. And I'm like, where did this come from? This neighborhood does not look like that. And not that there's a look or environmental racism type things, but I was so shocked at Denver. I had no idea. Then I went to teach in Kuwait because I was
Hold
like,
on, hold on.
oh,
You jumping ahead of me. I'm trying to get the pause in because I want to start talk back up a little bit about Japan because you said something really interesting. You said I was still thinking about the education system in the United States, and like certainly has to be something done about this. You didn't stay there for long, or you stayed long enough. Obviously, you moved. When you were in Japan, what did you notice about their education system that you felt like maybe could work in the United States or could not work in the United States based on, like you said, environment, based on systems and things like that? And on top of that, what made you come back? So those two questions, like what did you see? What did you notice? And then what made you come back?
yeah. So Japan was different because I was at a private English language school, so not a public school. Like in Kuwait, I was actually had my own class, but in Japan, I had maybe 30 or more classes ranging from children to adults. And I was just talking, just conversation. They already know grammar very well, more than us for English. They just need practice talking. So I had 3-year-olds, I had 80-year-olds, different classes based on their age, of course. But even at this private language school, just the respect for the teachers, of course, just the profession. Yeah, it's just embedded in the culture, even the name. One, I did get stopped. So I had to leave after about 10 months. The police wouldn't help me. It was a mess. They tried to move me to another school, but I felt like the stalkers knew where I lived. They did change schools. That didn't help. I would need to change apartments. So, and yeah, my time there was served. I didn't want to stay there any longer. My intention was never to stay there, wanted to come back to the US. I guess, was trying to reset when I left and went there. So, yeah, I guess it was just time to come back.
I mean, if I was getting stalked by somebody, I think it would be time for me to come back too. And to be fair. And while this is happening, you just said so much in this last couple sentences. I just want to back up. So while this is happening, you're moving to Japan and starting the school year in March and others in DC. What was the conversation that you had with your family or community about what was happening? What did they say about you moving on the other side of the globe to continue teaching? Did you feel like you received support? Were people skeptical? What was that conversation like?
Not skeptical. Both of my parents were very supportive and open, even though they never traveled like that. They just kind of, oh, that's what Stacie does. She grew up differently than us. My city that I grew up in had a high school exchange program with Japan as their sister city. So I had gone in 10th grade through the city. The city took 7 students every other year. And so I, met people there my age. So then when I went to Japan, I requested to be near my Japanese friend's house. I had support from, her and her family when I was there. And then, so my family was used to me, not used to me, but I had already been to Japan. So it wasn't out of the ordinary for them. So they were fine. I don't think they don't understand what my struggles were throughout any of my journey, which is why I'm making films, because I would try to explain it to people who weren't educators. I would try to explain it to them. They didn't understand. They're just like, oh, they're kids. They're first grade. They're cute. I'm like, it's not even like, you have no idea. You have no idea. School politics, all the stuff that teachers go through. Mm-mm.
It's
They
a
didn't
lot.
understand.
Yeah. And just thinking about this too. So you come back and you move to Denver. Is that correct? Why Denver?
That's where I was accepted to law school.
Why apply? Like of all the places.
Oh, I mean, I applied to many. It wasn't accepted to many. So that was one of the ones that I was accepted to. So I was like, okay.
I mean, yeah, that's the right answer. I mean, if why not? So tell us about your experience. You started going into it. Tell us about the experience that you had teaching in I'm assuming Denver public school systems because there's lots of school systems here. But tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yes. So the teacher, like I said, left. I included in my book that I wrote when I left teaching experiences that happened where I walked in and the kids were running circles around the classroom like it was a track field. I've seen, what's the code they call on students or any mental health? 50, no, whatever. I've seen them have to call that code for a student in distress. I had a first grader pick up one of those old heavy computers off the table, turn and drop it. It was unreal. And I thought DC, I won't say bad. I don't know what other like politically correct term to use, but each experience was different, but they were still very traumatizing and just things that I did not expect that were happening at elementary schools, first grade. Like, why is this all happening? And it's not to blame the kids or the parents or to say anything to pathologize the neighborhood. Kids can bring, I feel, whatever they want to the school, but if the school culture isn't breeds that negativity, you're going to have a different output. You're going to have fights at the school constantly. And I've been at schools where there are constant fights. But some schools, if the school culture is good, whatever the kids bring to the school is going to be positive. Like the negativity gets shut down because the school culture is so positive. But that's not, yeah, systemically, that can happen when you have teachers leaving like that or being fired. There's reasons why. So your
Uh,
question, sorry, I forgot
oh,
your
go
question.
ahead. Go ahead. I was just asking when you got to Denver, what was that experience like for you teaching and what did you notice? And you're talking a lot about that. And, like you say, young children and running around the classroom, being hired in the middle of the school year again. right? And so there's that lack of trust with the kids. And at that age, they're so young, they're maybe processing it as abandonment, right? And so that trying to build that trust up again with another teacher again, and the family trying to build up trust again with another teacher can be so challenging. So you were just talking about that. You said that you had some support while you were there. Did you have mentorship? And what was that like?
Yes, they did have a veteran teacher at that school help me. So she would come in. Yeah, even offered to help organize the teacher closet because that was a mess. So she was helpful too, but it was still stressful. The principal was very helpful. The assistant principal was there. They bought me a bunch of those computer games because at one point we just had to quiet, not under control. I don't know how to say it, but get some order in a good way. And we just needed computer games, the handheld ones. So the principal bought a bunch of those. We would have pizza parties. We were doing these things, incentives quickly to try to help establish a positive school culture. So even with support, though, it was still a lot, a lot on me, very taxing. I did it because it was a job. And again, I was younger. This was probably 20 years ago. So I didn't know, I'm just doing what think I'm supposed to, just doing my job and do care. So I heard in your previous episode that Dr. Jamita Horton, the principal said she cared too much. And I was thinking, did I care too much? But Denver, so while in DC, the school that I taught at was all Black students and staff. In DC, it was mixed. So Black and Latino, but then we also had a lot of Somali immigrant children. Yeah, those were the three. And yeah, there were things, this is a side note, but the Somali immigrant students were very high readers. I don't know how that happened. I'd like someone to do an anthropological study, but even having been in refugee camps and polite, respectful. And I remember one of my African American students could not read, and it was time for the summer school, and he didn't qualify. And I was like, don't all students get to go to summer school if they want? Like, what do you mean he doesn't qualify? But the English language learners were qualified. So the Somali students who could already read way above in past second grade level got to go to the summer school, but the Black student who needed it wasn't allowed. And I don't know how their ELL works now. Like I said, this was years ago, but I was just like, okay. And, you know, me trying to advocate, I didn't. Just so many factors and things going on. But yeah, that was unfortunate.
Can you tell me, while all this was happening, you having a lot of things happen in the classroom, a lot of changes, you just moved back from Japan, where you experienced some trauma, obviously from being stalked. How were you taking care of yourself, if at all, during this time and making sure that you were well? And I ask that question because, at the end of the episode, we'll talk about how you take care of yourself now. But I'd be curious to know, because you did a lot of moving in a short amount of time. What was care? What did it look like at that time in your career?
It was non-existent. I didn't know anything about care, self-care, wellness. I didn't know that was a thing. I could tell you what happened when I left teaching and what I did. Like you said, we'll talk about what I do now. I didn't know about moving from different places, the kind of grief I didn't know there was a thing or a term that could be used for jobs.
Yeah, we've come a long way in our communication and talking about community care and self-care and grief and workplace trauma and things like that. And like you said, that was 20 years ago. So for so many of us, it's like 20 years too late. And for some of us, there's still obviously time to heal and to be well. You left this particular school. How long were you there for?
3 years.
Okay. And then after that, where did you go? Did you finish law school? You sound like you were in school at the same time.
No, I went to law school first, graduated, then taught in Denver. Then, yeah, I went to Kuwait because I was like, I don't know what to do. I felt like the education system wasn't working for me. I felt the legal system wasn't going to work for me because I knew I didn't want to practice law. Once I went to law school, I was like, okay, the law is biased. They're not trying to change anything. I can't, for me personally, can't use or don't want to try to use the law to impact education. There's a lot of great education attorneys out there. It just wasn't for me. The actual practice of law, no. But I do appreciate the skills and perspectives that I gained while in law school. And I can use it now in my filmmaking. But I was like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like, I kind of felt like I wasted time. I'm like, what am I doing? So I was like, well, let me go abroad and teach again.
I mean, what a sobering, we'll talk about Kuwait, but what a sobering experience. Like you just said, going to law, thinking you're going to be able to do, here's some goals I have set out for myself. And then realize, like you just said, the law is biased. And so, and I'm glad you gave that context because I imagine that you had finished work at this school and then went to law school. And you said, no, I was teaching afterwards. And so this is a lot of layers, a lot of parts, moving parts that you're like discovering in lots of different fields and lots of different countries too. Every voice on the exit interview carries wisdom, resilience, and the reminder that Black educators deserve more than survival. They deserve to thrive. At Lions Educational Consulting, we create the spaces where that wisdom lives on in practice. For individual Black educators, our workshops offer room to breathe, to pause, and to rediscover purpose. For schools and districts, our consulting opens pathways to build equity-centered environments that honor Black educators and ensure they are seen, valued, and supported. These conversations don't stop at the end of the podcast episode. They ripple outward into classrooms, into leadership decisions, and into communities that benefit when Black educators are well. You're already a part of this story just by listening. If you're ready to take the next step, whether as a Black educator seeking wellness or as a leader reimagining your school's future, we'd love to walk with you. Connect with Lions Educational Consulting by connecting with me, Dr. Asia, on LinkedIn, or join me on Instagram. Together, let's transform stories into sustainable change. Now let's get back to the interview. Well, tell us about your experience in Kuwait and why Kuwait?
Yeah, so I applied to different schools, different countries. China contacted me and then the Kuwaiti school. And I can't remember, I think I was accepted to both. I can't remember why I didn't choose China. But when I went to Kuwait, the U.S. embassies were closed in Kuwait. So it could have been what I thought was harm's way, and I still went. That's the thing. That's how bad it was teaching in Denver that I was like, I will go to another country where I don't know anybody. The U.S. embassy's closed, but it's still better. I knew it was still better. And once I got there, it was. It was not like the media portrayed. People, are at the mall every day, relaxing, on yachts, chilling. It's fine. But I just knew it was better than the U.S. education system. So I had a first grade class, mostly Kuwaiti kids, some Egyptian. It was a private school, but they used American curriculum and they used phonics, which they don't teach anymore in the U.S., but that's what helps students of color. And so that's why they don't use it in the U.S. And so they used open court. And open court back in the day was what we used in schools, and it worked. But they took it away in the U.S. But so in Kuwait, that's what they were using. Those kids knew how to read way better than any kids I taught in the U.S. because we were doing like 3 hours of phonics a day. So yes, rote memorization. Yes, they're coloring. It looks like they're not doing anything, but those sounds are getting in their head. And so when these kids, their first language is Arabic, totally different alphabet, how are they able to, and of course there are different factors. They're rich. They have nannies. Parents may have more time because they have the nannies, just different lifestyle. But I still think a lot of it had to do with that 3 hours of phonics every day when at the schools I taught at, they were barely letting us do 15 minutes, if that. Our kids need that. If you don't come from a house that there's a lot of reading and literacy involved, you need it at school, direct instruction. And that's not what is happening in schools.
So this is really fascinating. When you got the Kuwait and you realized that what was happening and they were getting the phonemic awareness and all these things were happening these couple hours a day, did you ever call back to your folks here and say, like, this is what's happening? We should be doing something about it? Was there the sense of urgency to come back to the United States and try to push this idea? What was like stirring up inside of you? Because to me, I think I would be so frustrated and want to, even though I don't know if it would change anything, tell someone back here in education, this is what I'm noticing. This is what I'm seeing. We should do something about that. Like, what was that? Was there like a push, pull, or a tension thinking about the kids in DC, thinking about the kids in Denver? Or like, what was your mindset like at that time?
No, there actually wasn't tension because I know how the system here operates. So they took phonics away for a reason because it worked. So I'm like, I'm not going to try to advocate. Like they know, the research shows they know it. Yeah. What am I going to do? The system is set. I know it doesn't sound hopeful, but it just my reality of how I see the system. That's why my film production company is called School Dismissed. Because to me, it's like, no, I'm dismissed. It's over. The school system, like, I need separation. I can't do that. So I wasn't frustrated. I mean, frustrated in that, yes, I wish they used it back in the US, but the reality that I know they aren't for a reason. They stopped open court because they would say it's rote memorization. It's boring. The kids aren't learning anything. But the kids, they were fine for 3 hours talking and coloring and learning and laughing. They didn't even realize it's rote memorization. Some things you do need to just learn the sounds because you don't know them. And if your first language is Arabic, it worked perfectly. Like I said, far surpassed any of the students I taught in DC or Denver.
Thank you. And how long were you there for?
A year.
Yeah.
It was a great experience.
So leaving there, why did you leave?
My contract was only a year and I didn't want to stay longer, not because anything was wrong with the place or the school. I wanted to come back to the US again. I always wanted to be in the US. I just couldn't make it happen in the school system for me. So I came back because I wanted to. It was time.
Yeah. And where did you go from there?
There, I went back to my home city, Carson, and taught in a school district near Compton, Los Angeles County, but not LAUSD. So I taught there. That was my first time with predominantly Latino population, and that was fourth grade. And that was different. I don't know how real I want to be on this podcast.
It's up to you. It's up to you.
Yeah, I feel like people think Latino students are dumb. I think that with Black students too, but I feel like with Black students, they think we can't even learn. Like you don't have the brain capacity, mental capacity to think. So that's one thing. So when we would have the awards ceremonies, I just remember thinking people would be so excited, but I would be thinking in my head, even at this level, like the white and Asian schools wouldn't be getting awards for this. Like this is below basic, but we're having, an awards ceremony. And I just used to think. And then when we'd have the state test, I remember students not understanding the questions. While as we were practicing months prior to the test, if I translated, for lack of a better word, just made the question easier, then they knew what to do. So students were scoring low, but they understood how to do it. They just didn't understand the question. And so that, obviously goes into the bias with the testing. And it just didn't sit right with me again. I'm like, these students are brilliant. In California, I don't know how, well, Denver too, or Colorado has the ELL test. I don't know. I just felt like that was dumb too, because you're ranking someone, but what is this based on? Just because they may not show well on the test, or even if they do, what does that mean? Like, what is this for? Like, does it really? So we had tracked when it was time for the ELL period. One teacher would teach one level, one teacher would teach another level, one teacher would teach another level. Why can't they just all be at the same level? Because that just further tracks the students, I felt.
Sure. And you having that experience of noticing tracking, like you said, back in your middle school, it kind of is like here we go again, maybe different race, but same idea of people getting stuck in one space and not never being able to like test out or track out of a space.
Yes. And there was a student who could not read at fourth grade, and his mom wanted him to be retained. And I made the request, but he had to move on. And she asked me why. And I'm like, it's not my choice. Even when I had first graders who couldn't read, I had to move them on, and it only gets worse. I'm like, why are they doing this? It's not social promotion. It's not helping. Not for us. We need to be reading fluently at kindergarten, because at the end of first grade, it's essays. It looks like an essay, like 5-paragraph essays, a whole page, very intense, very dense text that kids are expected to read at the end of first grade. It's not baby work. They're expected to know a lot. And then you have this fourth grader got 10 pages that he can't read, but you're moving him on. It's like, these are the systemic things that I don't think should be. And if a parent is requesting, which parents are they listening to? If it had been another parent, would you have, and she was an immigrant with not good English, but so you don't listen to her request when she knows her kid can't read? I can't do it. I can't be in a system like that.
What's really interesting listening to your story is in my mind, I have a map and I'm thinking about you've been on the East Coast, you've been in the mountain states, you've been on the West Coast teaching, you've been in Japan, you've been in the Middle East. So you have a very broad perspective about what education looks like not all over the world, obviously, but in so many places. And I just keep thinking about, like you said, the things that we're celebrating our children for in one school would not be celebrated somewhere else. And so, like, where is the gap where we need to be pushing, not necessarily, yes, our students, but asking systems, asking administrators, asking districts and school boards, like, why are we celebrating these things? Probably in the same district, but then 20 miles east or west or north or south, that same district, a different group of kids, this wouldn't be good enough. And so, like, how do we end up falling down? We know the history. I don't want to say, how do we know? I mean, how did that happen? But I just think it's so fascinating that you got to see and to zoom out and notice all the indifference, because there aren't a lot of people, parents in particular, who get a chance to see these differences in education, because you have your one kid and they, or two or three, whatever, and they kind of stay in the same district typically or stay in the same state, but you got to see it all over. Like you said, private and public, 80-year-olds and 4-year-olds, right? I'm just sitting here processing and thinking through that. And in my mind, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the urgency of education and, like you said, the phonemic awareness and the types of curriculum and rote memorization, if it's good for you or not. And that conversation we've had for years. And you're saying it worked for kids who are learning English after knowing Arabic, which is not the same. You're right. So, like, why couldn't it work here? And we already know why. It's just a lot. You've seen so much in your time in education on top of going to law school and understanding law and the biases of the law in the United States. So no particular question about that. I just thought that was just so fascinating, the way that you being able to move throughout your life. When you left, or in this conversation, we're still in California. What year is this that you're talking about?
2000, like 14 to 16, maybe. And then, so after that school, I went to another school that was Los Angeles. It was a charter school in Los Angeles County, South LA. And that was an all Black school down the street from where Nipsey Hussle was killed. And just the grief and trauma, even when so I had already left that school at that time. That school didn't have a library. And when I left that school, that's when Nipsey was killed. And I texted those teachers and asked, hey, did they have anything at the school for this? No. And it's like, where's the care? Like, this is someone they know, I mean, they heard of in the community. who's been tragically murdered. Yes, it happens. People are murdered, but are we not going to address it? Like, even with Black administration, that just seems natural to me. Like, can't you hire some therapists or just even a school community meeting? I don't know.
Yeah, something, some way to honor and yeah, to pause.
Yeah, or let the kids speak, or they have thoughts. They've seen stuff. Just let's not move on like it's a regular school day. Just the kind of things that happen. Those are examples of I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know.
And that next school, well, I wanted to save this question, but now I've decided to go ahead to ask it. Then we can go and talk about the next school you went to. Thinking about across your career in education, in teach, because you're still education, obviously, but in the classrooms, what is something that you would say to parents right now that are listening to this episode who have a first grader or, a 3-year-old or even a high school student? What would you want them to know? How would you want them to advocate? What's something that you've realized that they need to understand when they have their kids, and myself included, having our kids in school systems, whether public or private or whatever, that you feel like everyone should know this and understand this?
I definitely think if parents can sometimes take off work if they have a regular 9 to 5 and drop in on the school, even unannounced, if your school, if it's an open campus and lets you, because you're not going to see the real unless you're in the classroom or unless you can walk the hallways and see fights or see kids having sex in the stairwell. You have to be in it to see it. And I've been at schools where the fights are so regular that the kids are immune to it and they get juiced and pumped and want to see, ooh, ooh, ooh. They want to see the fight because I was at a K-8 school also. So the middle schoolers would be fighting all the time. Well, the whole school. But when it was recess, lunch after lunch is when we would hear them walking up the stairs. And my kids were so juiced about that. And I was like, this is the wrong thing to get excited about. Like, there would be fights and I couldn't break them up. And you'd have adults that would just walk by. But because it was so common and we couldn't, touch the kids anyway, but they wouldn't even try to break up a fight. It's like you just let the kids fight. And I wouldn't open my door because I didn't want to get, I was trying to protect my 30 first graders. So I would just hear it. Sometimes I would call the office, but they knew they could see it in the cameras. We had a security guard. I don't know. It's just layers of dysfunction, I guess. And many of those parents had no idea all that was going on at the school. Some teachers, I think most teachers have good intentions. Some don't. And so as a parent, I would maybe say, go talk to the teacher outside of, regular conferences. Just email and email not about the kids' grades or assignments, just a quick check-in because, when people, they're going to look out for your kid and the teacher might naturally just end up telling you about this school politics just because they're dealing with a lot that you don't see. And so I want parents to be mindful of that, one, and then also to actually know what's going on. And the only way I can think of would be to be on campus sometimes, if possible, and or communicating with the teachers on occasion. It doesn't have to be regularly, but if you even schedule it in your calendar, knowing the secretaries, not, like I said, not just when you're picking up the child, but you're going to get information if you're friendly with them and because they know everything that's going on at the school. Some of it you would not be happy with if you knew.
Yeah. And when you're saying what you're saying about the fighting and, all the things that happen in the stairwells, I know that some families are going to say, oh, that's extreme. Like that's doesn't happen. And I will tell you that it does happen. And it does happen here in Colorado. I've witnessed a lot of things in schools, not just in the school where I taught, but outside of schools. It's happening all over. And so I love that you're telling families like drop in and, because you're right. The kids, what happened at school today? Oh, nothing. Especially if they're used to fighting or they're used to then it's just like same old same. And so what is happening to our kids when we're not around is a really great question. And getting in contact with, like you said, the secretaries and the teachers and asking questions and just making sure that your kid is feeling safe and seen. I think that's one of the things that's really been hard in education that I've heard over and over again is not so much the classroom, like in the classroom. Sometimes it's just like the environment around this classroom, what's happening in the lunchroom, what's happening after school, what's happening at the bus stop. That can be really great for kids or really, really hard for students because of all the things that could happen when adults aren't around. Or like you just said, adults are there, they witness it, and then nothing happens because both the children and the adults are immune to what's happening in the schools. So I appreciate you sharing that piece of information. You went on to another school after this, and you're continually teaching first graders. I'm just thinking about this, like all these first graders and where they are now, right? That's gotta be so hard to see them witnessing. Cause yeah, somewhere in your classroom, there are also some that were in the hallway going to the bathroom and saw a fight. And like, how does that normalize in their mind that that's okay? But where did you go after that school?
Yes, to a school in, you mean the South LA school? That was the last school.
Yes, tell us about that was your last school. Okay. And then after that, what would made you decide you went from school to country, right? Why did you like what was that? Like, I'm done. That was the last straw. I can't go any further in this form of education.
Yeah, my physical, mental, and emotional health was suffering. Back at the school with the Latino students, I had shingles. And then at this last school, my hair was falling out in the back, like this size, just straight bald. And so, yeah, I was like, this is not healthy. It was affecting me personally, personal relationships. I look back now and know that I was depressed. I didn't know it at the time. And when I left teaching, I was diagnosed with PTSD from teaching, is what the therapist told me. I said, I thought that was for Vietnam vets. Because I don't know. She said, no. She said, well, she said, what you're describing, these symptoms, this matches the same thing. The kind of when you drive in the school parking lot and your body gets tense, the environment of the school, that's a bodily reaction of, protection. And I forgot how she described it, but she said it's the same symptoms. And so that's what I was diagnosed with. Even with the fights, like I said, it would be a wave of of just a feeling of a negative feeling, you know, that would come over when you hear students fighting. Like, why? It's not healthy. And it didn't have to be also. But so what broke the camel's back, I guess, was many things, but I think a first grade student bucked up on me after recess. Not scared of the little boy. It was just the fact that he thought he was upset about some recess issues, but if they had taken the teacher's advice about how to better structure the playground, then it would be safe and orderly. So when we came in, we wouldn't have fights and he wouldn't be upset. But I felt like disrespected because he didn't know how hard I'm trying for him. And then to take it out, he was taking his frustration out on me. But I'm like, I'm the adult. Like, to even think you're going to buck up on me. I was like, this is ridiculous. And I ended up going off on the class and I showed on the screen Emmett Till's in his casket. I did. Probably shouldn't have shown it to the first graders and we could edit this out, but I put it in my book. I wrote about it because it took me back to my grandmother, like segregated Virginia. And then I'm here and you want to buck up on me? Like, that's not what I knew education. That's not the brilliance I know of Black people. So it was like, what are you doing?
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that's really hard. And this is a 6-year-old. Yeah, not his fault. And like you just said, all these things are happening. But then like you said, on the back end, you were experiencing fatigue, you were experiencing PTSD, you were experiencing trauma. And so all of you are just bouncing all that trauma and fatigue off of each other. And that has to be really, really hard. You're not in education in that way anymore. Tell me, what are you doing now?
So I'm a filmmaker. I gave up on those two systems and I was like, let me you try to use film to advocate for education issues. So that's what I'm doing. I have the freedom I'm not constrained by a system. And so I can make the films that I want. So I have a trilogy of narrative fiction feature films. I made 2 short films last year and 3 narrative fiction feature films. So the first one will come out. It's actually this Saturday at the Brave Maker Film Festival in Redwood City, which is near San Francisco. And we have other premieres coming up. And there is a trilogy. The theme is AI, benefits and challenges. So this first one is neutral to the idea of AI. The other two show the challenges in terms of surveillance, privacy tracking of Black students and the billion-dollar industry the AI security systems are. But this first one, I wanted, hoping school districts, it'll start a conversation with school districts because we're not talking about it, but I want people to be thinking about, you're not having students use it in schools. I think we still should address it because it's here and not going anywhere, and teach students how to use it ethically, even if they're not using it as a tool. Just let them know there's an ethical way to do this and what it is, because the students already know anyway. And then who's owning these AI systems? It just seems like AI is going to be it is another way to track, and we're not going to be a part of the puzzle because most of our schools don't even have STEM. So let alone they're not going to be talking about AI. So I just feel like it's going to put us behind. And I'm just trying to raise awareness about that. So it's about a teacher who's trying to have an AI show at his school and the principal is against him. There's a lot of school politics involved, grief. They are all Black male educators. And the superintendent is a woman. She's the only woman in the film. But we have a group of dads that are in the film. They're advocating for their kids. It's called Mr. Advocate. So essentially, it's what I wish I could have done in education, but couldn't. And it was easier for me to use male educators because when I tried to write them as women, it was too triggering for me, too personal. So I made them male and it put distance so I could be vulnerable more so in the writing. And yeah.
Yeah. Why filmmaking? Of all the things to do, how did you come up to decide that filmmaking was a medium that you were going to use?
Yeah, it was happenstance because I was not the kid who watched movies all the time, did not have a camera as a child. I was not, it's so random, but I guess I just kept wanting to show people because they didn't understand. Even my mom, I would complain to her and she'd be like, do something about, like, I don't want to hear that. Cause, her mother was in segregated Virginia and they were doing the thing. So
Sure.
then, and I'm like, no, you don't get it. And she's like, but this is first grade. And I'm like, if you don't get it, it's the whole system. It's not that. And so I would think, dang, if I could show people, because they're not me describing it, they're not getting it.
Yeah.
So it just seemed to me that film would be, no one's going to read an, no, I won't say no one's going to read an article, but a certain demographic will read an article. But maybe to get it to the masses more, if I thought, well, maybe film, even my book, nobody's going to read my book. You know what I mean? So I'm like, maybe if I use film, that can help show people visually.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense because you're right. I always said that, my topics on my dissertation is on racial battle fatigue, its impact on Black educators and our families. And I said that if a Black educator was experiencing racial battle fatigue, they're not going to read my dissertation. Like, if you're experiencing PTSD, no one's going to sit and read chapter upon chapter upon chapter. But film, podcasting, music are all ways that people can hear and understand as they're going back and forth, all the different ways. So I love that you were thinking, what's the way that people can grasp onto this and understand it? And like you said, the Black male educator too. Also on top of that, we know there are less than 2% of Black male educators. So that's probably, even though you have your reasons that you chose, I'm sure that will also inspire more Black educator or Black men to be educators and young men to be educators too. So tell us more about the film festivals. Tell us more about that work. Have you found it to be as rewarding as you thought it was going to be? We want to know all the things.
Yes. So we have submitted to many festivals. So we are doing a film festival run, waiting to hear back from other festivals. On August 15th, we're going to have our own premiere at a movie theater out here. And I have signed a distribution deal. So I'm waiting to see if any streaming platforms are interested, but I'm not relying on that. So I also am doing my own distribution where I will license the film to school districts, colleges, and universities as a PD. So showing the film and then having a facilitated discussion with the staff through their RFPs or vendor pools at the school districts. And then doing a California college tour and an HBCU college tour.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And yeah, well, definitely, I know that in our show notes, there'll be information about all your bio and things like that and the information for the film. So I'm excited for people. So if you're listening to this and you want to learn more, go back into the Exit Interview podcast website and click on Stacie's information. It's going to be at the very bottom. My next question is, in all your time, you talked about your grandmother, you talked about all the places you've been. In that time, have you found a Black teacher, Black educator, or multiple that you feel like should be shouted out on our show?
Yes. They were, or actually, yes, 3. I shouted them out for Teacher Appreciation Week a couple of months ago. Yes, one, why is her name Mrs. Jackson, my English teacher in high school, a Black woman. She was mean and I liked it. That's what we needed. She didn't play. She wanted us to learn. You were going to learn in her class. No slouching, no being lazy. Like you were going to get the information because she cared. She was mean because she cared. And I very thankful to her. In her class, that's when I first started to express myself completely on paper. Then also Dr. Pedro Noguera. He was my professor. I took his class at UC Berkeley 1997 or 98. Education 40, Race and Culture in the School System. That lecture hall had maybe 300 students, and he knew my life story. He knew all of our life stories because of the work that he's done. And I was like, oh, so this happens. This is tracking. Oh, this is other people experience that too. That's just not in my, that's world. That's nationwide. Oh, okay. Because we would be there like nodding our heads. It was crazy. And he introduced me to tracking. Jeannie Oakes at UCLA, her research on tracking, how the Irish became white, the Asian model minority myth, all this stuff I saw growing up. He addressed it, and I appreciate that he was bold with it. He just said what was, and it was our reality. Because most of us were Black and brown in that class. And then Professor Catherine Smith, my law professor, these are all Black educators. She opened up her office hours to everyone. So Black teachers doing the most because none of the other professors did that. And you could come back as many times as you want with the practice exams, and she would go over it and tell you what to do. And I mean, how to structure it in the right way, because you use the IRAC system in law school, issue, rule, application, conclusion. And I didn't understand it. And I just needed someone to show me. And so me going back and back every time with the same essay, test every time, practice test. Then I finally got it after 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now I can apply this to the other classes. It's just one little tweak that I needed someone to show me. And she did that. And she was strict too, mean. Not mean, but you weren't going to play with her. She took her work seriously, and you were going to learn. And I appreciate all 3.
Yeah, thank you. The last question, we talked about this earlier and I'll circle back to it. So our last question is, you've experienced a lot in education. You're still working in education, trying to make sure that communities understand what education could look like, what it does look like. And that's a lot of work. So for you on this side, all these 20 years later, for you, what does it mean to be well?
Yes. I actually had my therapist appointment before you today, before this podcast.
Righto.
I meet with her every week and she gets on me about, she's asking what you do for yourself, or, even if it's little things, she stays on me. I'm trying. Definitely keeping my weekly appointments with her. I do go walking, and I've changed. I used to walk at the marina, which I still do sometimes, but now I discovered the regional park, which is not too far, but it's very calming. The wind, so it's like healing. It breezes over me when I leave. I didn't realize, but every time I leave there, I'm like, oh, I feel like refreshed, rejuvenated just from the wind and being in the nature, the trees, the water is there. So I'm going to go there more. I do have yoga. I have a yoga membership. It's a Black woman owned spot and rates are very reasonable. So I incorporate yoga as well, walking. And other than that, I need to say no more and have better boundaries with just being overloaded with work and the film distribution and marketing. It's a lot of administrative and business legal work behind it, but I need to practice saying no more, just putting boundaries.
That's all of us. I feel like that's all of us. Well, Stacie, this is the end of our podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for teaching us something today. Because again, you're the first person that we've had on that's been in multiple countries teaching. And so you allowing us to understand what it can look like in education. Folks, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're drinking your water, you're walking, you're doing your yoga, you get into that therapy appointment, and don't lie to your therapist. Tell your therapist the truth, right? And we'll see you on the next episode. All right. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. Every story shared here is a reminder that our wellness matters and that thriving in education is possible when we create spaces of care and belonging. If today's conversation spoke to you, we'd love to keep in touch. You can sign up for our newsletter at exitinterviewpodcast.com or connect with me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on upcoming workshops, consulting opportunities, and ways we're transforming stories into solutions through Alliance Educational Consulting. And before you close out, take a deep breath. Remember that caring for yourself isn't extra, it's essential. Whether you're an educator seeking rest or a school leader reimagining support, you're part of this growing community of care.